Scott here with the new My Monthly Hero July 2022 kit. Looks like this month Hero Arts is sending us to the tropics with a big bevy of flamingos. A nice big group of flamingos. I think they call that a stand of flamingos. This is done in the HeroScapes style, which just means that these are layering stamps. So you've got the background. This looks like detail on top of that. More detail along with the legs. I believe these are everybody's beaks because flamingos generally have black beaks, I believe. We've got 2 layering stamps for some water at their feet. A bunch of little pieces here. We've got a couple of clouds, some grasses, a couple of dragonflies. Looks like we've got some shrimp in a couple of different sizes, some little bitty fish. We are flamingoing this month. You are flamazing. You tickle me pink. Stand tall, darling, and happy birthday. I've heard that recently. We also get 7 coordinating frame cuts. So this square one would cut out the water. We've got the flock of flamingos. We've got the shrimp, the big shrimp, the 2 grasses, the 2 dragonflies. Looks like we don't have a die for the little trio of shrimp down there. That's our 6 by 8 inch stamp set and our 7 coordinating frame cuts. And we also get some inks with this. Usually Hero Arts gives us inks when they give us a HeroScapes style stamp set. So we've got 3 pinks or reds here. These are the new Hero Hues Core Ink line. They just came out with this whole new line of core inks. We've got Cotton Candy, Peony, Azalea, Arctic, and Paradise. So there's enough for the water there. We've got 3 different hues for the flamingos. Can't wait to try out that new core ink, see how it works. We also get some Hero Hues gem stickers in pink and turquoise. These are peel and stick. And we get a bottle of the new Hero Pearls in teal. This would be like Nouveau drops or any kind of enamel drops, I believe. I love it when Hero Arts comes out with new things and gives us a chance to try them in their kits. I may have to push the envelope a little bit here this month to get 10 cards out of this kit, but I will stand tall and hopefully rise to the challenge. I hope I can make this kit flamazing. And here we have my 10 cards. We've got not all white card bases. We've got a green one. There's an ivory one. We got a square card. We've got a big slimline card. Whenever we get a kit that features only one main image, I get a little bit antsy about coming up with 10 different cards. Now, initially I had some concerns with this kit, of course, but I figured I'd start out by just seeing how easy it is to layer up these HeroScape stamps. So for our first card, I'm sure this is exactly along the lines that they planned for us to use this kit. We have You Are Flamazing with our big group, our flock of flamingos. Did you know a flock of flamingos is also called a patch of flamingos, or my favorite, a flamboyance of flamingos. These stamps line up so very easily. I stamped the solid layer stamp on, this is a panel of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I stamped the first layer, the first solid layer with the peony ink. I stamped the feathered layer with the cotton candy ink and the leg layer with the azalea ink. And finally, I did the beaks and the eyes with intense black ink. Those flamingos are absolutely beautiful. I was actually surprised at how nicely those HeroScape layering stamps came out, really, and they lined up so easily. I stamped the solid water stripe with the Arctic core ink and the detail water strip with the Paradise core ink, and I added the 2 plant stamps using the Paradise ink as well. I finished out by stamping the clouds in the sky using some Hero Arts contour ink. So since I had already stamped the water over their legs and the plants and everything, I decided to just leave this all on one panel and just create a background for the whole thing. So I ink blended Hero Arts Soft Sky ink around the top 3 sides of this panel, and then I ink blended some of the Arctic ink along the bottom 3 sides here. And I stamped the sentiment with intense black ink and embossed that with some clear embossing powder. There you go, you can see some shine on that sentiment there. I did reach for my little Pebbles chalk palette. I lightly blended a couple of the yellow chalks behind the flamingos. Now these chalks are light enough so they don't really affect the stamping, so it's quite a bit easier to fill in some background colors and not have to worry about coloring over your flamingos. I trimmed the panel down to 4 3/16 inches by 5 7/16 inches, and I glued that to an A2 card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. We've got a thin white frame around our paneled scene here. I did look to see if flamingos have pink legs, and they sure do. I really admit I love this flamboyance of flamingos. You are flamazing. And that's a nice pun, too. So let's work on the sentiments in this stamp set. I always try to use all of the stamps in a stamp set. We've only got 4 sentiments here. So as far as giving me some inspiration, I decided to go with the sentiments first. And we do have one punny sentiment. So of course I figured I'd go for the pun first, and we've got a happy birthday with our flamboyance of flamingos all wearing little party hats. I have one caveat with these stamps. If you want to use the frame cut to die cut out this flock, then you have to be a little careful when you line up the stamps. The design of this layering stamp is very forgiving for stamping, but it's completely unforgiving if you want to die cut these fellows out. So just be aware, if you're planning on die cutting them, you need to line those stamps up perfectly, because your one die cut is die cutting all of those 3 stamps out, all of those 4 stamps out. So you've got to get those legs lined up perfectly with that body. Just beware. I did have to adjust things a few times before I got things stamped absolutely perfectly and the die cut would work well. I added little party hats. These are all stamped exactly the same way I stamped our first flamingos. I added little party hats to all of their heads. I just drew those with some Zig clean color markers and cut them out, little triangles, cut a curve on them so it would go on their head. I wish I could have given them all martini glasses. The background is blended using Arctic and Paradise Core inks through this, my old Stampendous. This is Flourish's metal stencil. This is my go-to stencil for birthday cards. I'm sure you've all seen it before. I cut the background down to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I glued it to a 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch black glitter mat, and then down to a A2 card base. I stamped the sentiment again with intense black ink, and I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder. There's some shine there. I die cut 3 more of our flock of flamingos, just plain white cardstock. I glued those all together with the stamped flock on top and then down to the card base. I added some small gems to the hats and some of the Hero Arts pearls on the background. Those pearls are really pearlescent, really nice and shiny. And I think this is a full-size bottle. I have enough teal hero pearls to last me a lifetime. I think these hats add a nice little touch of whimsy to this punny birthday card. I like how the flock sticks out a little bit on the left and right of the card. If you know anybody that has yard flamingos, this would be a perfect birthday card for them. So I noticed a couple of the Hero Arts designers and blog posters were adding reflections of the flamingos on their cards, which is easily done by stamping the legs on a piece of acetate and then flipping that over and pressing it down to your paper. Now, since it's a reflection, you don't have to worry about it being stamped perfectly. That's a great idea for any sort of reflection stamping. You're not trying to get perfect, absolutely great reverse stamping. It's just reflection. So once I had figured out the perfect alignment of these stamps, I went ahead and stamped a few panels with the pink flamingos just to have on hand. I did a couple with lighter pink legs. I even started embossing the beaks and their eyes with clear embossing powder. That adds a really nice touch. I kept marveling at how wonderful this flock looked all by itself on a white card panel, when I thought it might be interesting to add some reflections. No water, nothing particular that is reflective. This is the card I came up with. Stand tall. I just think this is extremely arresting. the reflections, you know those are reflections. I think your mind just automatically fills that in. The illusion is complete. You know how much I like my white space, and I really like this quite a lot. Now, personally, I don't call anyone darling, so I performed some stamp surgery to remove the stand tall from the darling. I stamped and embossed the simpler sentiment on the card front. You can see a little bit of shine on that. I trimmed that panel to 4 inches by 5 1/4. I glued it to a thin black mat and then down to a white card base. I think this is really fetching. It really focuses down on the intricacies of those layering stamps. This is definitely one of my favorites. Stand tall. Okay, I have one more sentiment to go. I wondered if I could cull one of these flamingos away from the herd for this next card. So here we have our You Tickle Me Pink card with a single flamingo. Now, the flamingos on the far right and far left, they look to be in front of the other birds. So I cut out the far right bird from a flock of flamingos. I thought his bent leg added a little bit more authenticity, or at least a little bit more interest. The legs are pretty thin, but it's not impossible to cut around. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock using the azalea ink and embossed it with clear embossing powder. And then I ink blended some Key Lime Fizz reactive ink over the white cardstock before fussy cutting it out. This background is a piece of plain green cardstock embossed with, this is a new Spellbinders 3D embossing folder. This is called Leafy, a nice 3D embossing folder. I put some Lucky Clover ink on the flat side of our panel and embossed my green cardstock with that. That gave us a nice leafy two-tone background. Pink and green are always perfect partners. I trimmed the background to 4 inches by 5 1/4, glued that to a thin pink mat, and then down to a green card base. I glued the flamingo to the sentiment right at his foot and added them to the card front with foam tape. The green background makes the pink flamingo really pop right off the card. This tickles me. You tickle me pink. So that covers the 4 sentiments in our stamp set. And, you know, most of the stamps, we've got these 2 dragonfly stamps, a small school of fish, and, of course, these little shrimps. Are these too small to be featured all on their own? Okay, here's another pun for you. This card was inspired by the pun. And we have... You're 1 in a quillion. So, you know, krill are basically just small shrimp, and they generally hang out in the millions. This is kind of putting a magnifying glass on a single critter here. I stamped the little group of krill all over the front of a white card base using peony and contour inks, and I die cut a shrimp hole in the center and stamped the big shrimp on the inside of the card to match the die cut hole. I did add detail to this larger shrimp with a .05 Pigma Micron marker. As just a silhouette stamp, it really needed some detail in order to carry its own weight on this card. It's minuscule weight. You're 1 in a trillion. I printed the sentiment on the inside of the card base. This is using my silhouette software and the blackjack font. You're 1 in a trillion. But the big shrimp was still getting a little lost amongst all these little ones, so I added a glossy black circle die cut over the shrimp die cut on the front of the card. That really highlights the single shrimp when viewed from the front. A little starlight glitter pen I drew through a lot of those little mini krill just to give it a little extra sparkle on the front. I don't know if you can read that. It is possible to make a card just using the shrimp stamps. I couldn't resist using this perfectly appropriate pun for this fun encouragement card. You're 1 in a trillion. Okay, we've done the pink flamingos. What about other colors? We could stamp these flamingos in lots of other colors, couldn't we? This is on an ivory card base, and we've got Stay Cool with a bunch of blue flamingos. These guys are stamped with the Hero Arts. This is with the Hero Arts Reactive Early Dawn for the back, for the first stamp, Summer Sky for the feather stamp, and Blue Reactive for the leg stamp. I thought those three worked really well together. Of course, did stamp their beaks and eyes using intense black ink. I added the 2 water stamps at their feet in Arctic and Paradise inks, and then I partially die cut the flamingos so I could keep the water attached. Just stopped die cutting them right before the water there, and then just trimmed out the water to complete that die cut. I printed this sentiment on the front of an ivory card base using my silhouette software and the Dream State font. I die cut a yellow circle using a Hero Arts Circle Infinity die. I glued that to the card front and glued the flamingos and water on top. A few of our Hero Arts pearls highlight the sentiment, and considering how much heat we've already had this year, I think Stay Cool is a perfectly appropriate greeting for the dog days of summer. I really like these blue flamingos. I think they work really nicely. Stay cool. So we've gotten a number of palette ink pads over the years in our My Monthly Hero kits. That's those ink pads that are made of more than 2 or 3 colors. I wondered if we could use one of those palette ink pads to stamp these flamingos. And we've got Different is Beautiful with a little rainbow of flamingos here. Now, I used the Rainbow Reactive Ink Palette Pad from our March 2021 kit. This was the book and reading kit, I believe. The Rainbow Reactive Ink Palette Pad to stamp the second and third layer of the flamingos. The first solid layer I stamped just using contour ink. So that's why we've got the little light feathers in there, their light beaks. Gray for the first level, then that palette ink pad for the next 2 layers. I stamped a double pattern of the water beneath them. I added some of the shrimp. I added some of the fish down amongst their feet. And then I reached for my Pebbles chalks again and filled in the background. I really like those chalks. They really do very little to anything that's stamped. And it's so easy to add color behind something that you've already stamped. I stamped the clouds again in contour ink. I printed this sentiment on that panel, Different is Beautiful, using my silhouette software, and this is the blackjack font again. I even used some of those chalks down here to feather out the water a little bit. I trimmed the stamped panel to 4 by 5 1/4, glued it to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch black mat, and then down to a white card base. A gem from the kit highlights the sentiment, and I think the rainbow flamingos are fun. My little yellow portion on that palette is getting a little dirty from moving back and forth, but you still get that sense of a rainbow through there. Different is beautiful. My, what colorful flamingos you have. So I had one more color combo I wanted to try with these flamingos. This was inspired by the main sentiment in our stamp set, and we have Be Flamazing. And these are Flamazing Flamingo. I stamped this Flamboyance of Flamingos with Lemon Drop Reactive ink for the first solid layer, Creamsicle Reactive ink for the feather layer, and Fruit Punch Reactive ink for the leg stamp. Very fiery. I thought these colors were great. They could almost see these as real life flamingos, I think. I stamped the water stamps at their feet and stamped the Flamazing below using the same colors. I found this bee stamp. I surgically removed it from the Butte sentiment stamp in the My Monthly Hero April 2020 Australia kit. There was that one sentiment that said Butte, B-E-A-U-T, and I just cut the B-E off. So I've got a nice Bee Flamazing stamped in the same fiery colors as the flamingos. And then I embossed all of that with clear embossing powder. Then I could mask off the water and the flamingos and ink blend over the top of that to give us a black background behind this embossing. Embossing resists that ink perfectly, and I trimmed the bottom of this to 4 inches wide. I cut a 4-inch square of the black glitter cardstock and glued that to the back of the flamingos and then down to a 4 1/4 inch square top folding card base. Ooh, I made a top folding card. This flock is certainly Flamazing. I found it a little tough to highlight the smaller stamps in this stamp set because all of the smaller stamps are simply silhouettes. There's no detail to them. They're only shapes. So I thought, since they're just shapes, maybe we could find some fun embossing powder, and that might be one way to get some mileage out of those dragonfly stamps. So here we have a really sparkly dragonfly card. May you touch dragonflies and stars, dance with fairies, and talk to the moon. Really. This is like my favorite unattributed dragonfly quote of all time. So on a piece of Hero Hues Arctic cardstock, I stamped this flight of dragonflies using embossing and watermarked ink, and I embossed them with Wow Cloud 9 embossing powder. I've had this for a while. I don't use it very often, but it actually worked really well for these dragonflies. They just glitter and shine. Really pleased with how that worked on this. I filled in around them with some die-cut holographic stars, and I trimmed the panel to 2 inches by 5.5 inches. I printed this sentiment on the card front, again using my Silhouette software, and this is the Dream State font. I've got a lot of sentiments this month, and I can make them available to you both in Silhouette format, and I can also do a PDF format for you. Just let me know what format you'd like. And after printing the sentiment, I glued the dragonfly panel to the card front, added some silver holographic peel-off stickers to the top and bottom edges. This is actually a nice mellow break from all the riotous colors of the flamingos so far. And it's a touching encouragement card, I think. I love that little sentiment. May you touch dragonflies and stars, dance with fairies, and talk to the moon. We've got our slimline card left. This card came about when I noticed how many extra flocks of colorful flamingos I had sitting on my desk. And we have Dare to Be Different with 16 flamingos. I had a couple of pink flamingos stamped, die cut, and ready to go. I had one flock of purple flamingos. I think you've already seen that exposed on my desk. One flock of purple flamingos that I had stamped. Now, for these purple flamingos, I love these purple flamingos too. I actually used reactive thistle ink, grape slush ink, and then grape juice ink. So that's the reactive thistle, grape slush, grape juice, and I believe they're all inks that have come in previous My Monthly Hero kits. So I had one of those sitting around. I had a couple of the pink ones. I decided to glue them all together. And of course, I fussy cut that last flamingo away from my purple flock and glued that over the last flamingo on this side of the flamingos. This one puts a smile on my face. So this is a 3.5 by 8.5 inch slimline card. So I printed the sentiment using my Silhouette software and the paprika font on a 7-inch by 8.5 inch white card base. I, of course, scored that at 3.5 inches, folded that in half. I ran a strip of pink washi tape that I found in my stash. Actually, kind of a perfect match there. I ran a strip of this thin pink washi tape along the bottom edge and then added a 1/4-inch piece of that black glitter cardstock. I thought that black glitter cardstock worked really well with all of these pink flamingos. That gave me a place to anchor these flamingos, which are simply glued to the card front. A pink gem highlights the sentiment for a final bit of sparkle. Now, when you consider that flamingos do travel in flocks and they generally are all pink, which comes from eating mostly shrimp, it does seem fairly courageous to flaunt your purpleness in front of everyone else. Go ahead, dare to be different. So that's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero July 2022 kit. Man, that is a lot of flamingos. Call me a little bit obsessed, but I got the biggest kick out of the simple ease and excellent results of these flamingo layering stamps. I think you can tell, I mean, heck, 8 of my 10 cards feature those flamingos. Short of one bird day card, most of these cards turned out to be encouragement-oriented. I do think that was basically in line with the general theming that this kit was going after. Of course, when you have a large group of identical critters, my mind does tend towards encouraging some nonconformity. I did manage to use every stamp in this set, except for the darling, of course. I really like the krill and dragonfly cards that highlight a couple of these minor stamps as well, but I do really like these new core inks. And the little ink cubes that we get in our kit are nice and juicy, and those colors smooth out so beautifully. Really nice, basic, good dye inks. And of course, it's always great fun to be able to play with some of the new Hero Arts pearls as well. These are very pearlescent. I did have more fun with this kit than I initially thought I would. And I do have a few more ideas that I hadn't even gotten to yet. Of course, I still have a pink flamingo hanging around and a batch of purple flamingos hanging around. This kit is still available at Hero Arts. If you like what you see and you want your own flamboyance of flamingos in your stash, please use my links in the description down below and grab a kit for yourself. Once they're gone, they are gone. My monthly hero kits are always a great value. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I'm always thrilled to hear from you. Please let me know which card or cards are your favorite. Please remember to click that thumbs up for me if you like this video. It tells YouTube to share this video with other like-minded people. And of course, remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, follow me, friend me, share me with all of your crafty friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, I wish you and yours love and light and happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.